Well, Jace Regan on Country Viewpoint, he and I were chatting, and the Prime Minister's idea about a vaccine passport, Jace described as a brain fart. Well, it's starting to look pretty smelly, this idea that you might need a passport to move between states. I'm a regular advocate for describing this sort of stuff as pandemic politics, where you see these proposals put up and they're ostensibly about keeping people safe in the pandemic, but there's actually politics at play. The reality is that now Scott Morrison is one of the only leaders around the country facing an election in the next year or so, apart from South Australia, where Stephen Marshall is up for re-election next March. But one of those easy cards to play when you're heading into an election is to beat up on someone else and say they're not doing the right thing by us and I'm going to stick up for you and be a strong leader. And the PM's trying to set that argument up by saying, well, I'm going to be tough on these states who are going to make your life difficult for you. Certainly people have been pretty frustrated and cranky, I think Queenslanders and Western Australians in particular, at the hardline border lockdowns. Oh, there's another one I think of. Daniel Andrews, gee, he's been slapping those lockdowns down pretty hard and frustrated people in our Victorian listening area as well. So the PM thought, it seems as it all comes out in the wash now, that he could play a pandemic politics card and get some voter support with this idea of a vaccine passport. But the way it came out at the time, he was talking about it in the context of reopening the country, and that business and the economy would be able to get going again because people would be walking around with these vaccine passports on their phone. Here in South Australia, you'd be familiar with using your QR code to scan in when you walk into a business. That's if you're bothering anymore. The police have been around making sure that you are. But the idea of a vaccine passport or a digital vaccine passport would be to say, well, I'm allowed to cross the border. I'm allowed to enter this place because I have been vaccinated. Clearly, there's some slow take-up on the vaccine, and people have got their reasons for not wanting to be vaccinated or not getting around to it yet. I think that's frustrating the government, who were originally talking about everyone in Australia being fully vaccinated by the end of this year. That's only just over 6 months away. In the federal budget Tuesday a week ago, they said, well, we'll have people vaccinated if they wanted to be vaccinated by the end of this year. The numbers, we don't quite see reliable polling on how many people will bother getting vaccinated, but the hard border policies and restrictions have ensured that we don't have a spiralling rate of transmissions and deaths in Australia because of COVID. But let's go back to this COVID passport idea. It was copied from what's happening in Europe, where they're calling it a green pass, and I think the government is either one of two things. Either, as they like to call him on Twitter, Scott Morrison is Scotty from marketing. Either Scotty from marketing, who was with Tourism Australia before, got the marketing on this all wrong and should have called it a green pass in the first place, or they were genuinely thinking about having a passport for domestic travel within Australia, and then they've realised it's a real stinker, or a brain fart, as Jace Regan called it, and they're backtracking now. And so Stuart Robert, he's the Employment Minister, he's popped up on Sky News late yesterday. He's good chums with the PM, they say they're best mates, and he has said, well, no, what we were talking about was giving people the ability to get around state border restrictions by saying, well, you have to let me in because I've been vaccinated, here's my vaccine passport. Scotty from marketing, if that was the plan, that's what you should have said from the get-go. If you'd explained it that way, you wouldn't have had these state premiers all saying, oh, no, I don't think we need anything like this. This has been one of the worst handled policy ideas by the Prime Minister in his term in office. If there was something meritorious as a sort of federal override against state laws, more like a green pass than a passport, they should have said that from the get-go. I'm not saying personally I'm attracted to the idea nonetheless, because there's a whole lot of privacy concerns I have with all of the tracking that's going on at the moment, but they've really botched this, the federal government, this idea of a digital vaccine passport. I think it'll be unceremoniously dumped or rebadged, whatever they end up doing. Watch this space.